Hey, welcome to the show. Today I'm going to sit down with Senate candidate Kendal Sacchieri. She's running for Senate District 43 against incumbent Jessica Garvin. And so you're going to hear from her platform, and why she's running. You got to stay tuned.
This is the Jake for the State podcast, and this is the call for every red-blooded, God-fearing, liberty-loving patriot to prepare yourself, take your position, stand your ground, and advance the cause of freedom. Let's go.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Jake for the State podcast, and it is election season, so that means there's plenty of candidates to talk to. So I'm excited about talking to my next guest, who is a candidate for Senate District 43 here in Oklahoma. It is Kendal Sacchieri. Welcome to the show, Kendal.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we already had a great interview discussion on the show, on the 96.9 Jake Merrick Show. So it's good to have you on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I look forward to digging into some of these issues a little bit deeper. You have been serving as county assessor for how long now?
Starting my 6th year.
6th year. And which county is this in?
McLean County.
McLean. Okay. So what got you into that? I guess maybe is that your first dive into politics, going into
It was.
County assessor? Okay. What made you decide to jump into that race and get involved as a county assessor?
My husband called me one day and was just like, hey, what do you think about running for assessor? I was debating on leaving public education, and I thought, well, there's been some people frustrated and I have questions too. Why not run? So knocked doors all summer and read my handbook, and it's a big one. I read a really long handbook for how to be an assessor in Oklahoma, learned my titles, and I won.
So you're no stranger to jumping into uncharted territory.
Yeah, knew nothing about it.
I know the feeling. What did you do in public education?
I was a Spanish teacher, and I coached, and I drove a bus. You know how it is being an educator. You do everything because it's needed. Everyone needs to help where they can.
Exactly. So, Spanish teacher. I mean, we can talk about immigration in a little bit and the need for maybe some improved Spanish skills these days.
Right.
But we'll get into that in a little bit. As an assessor, you're exposed obviously to the local, and I love to talk about local. I love to talk about, I believe the most important aspect of our political process is the local, the public school boards, the city councils, the assessors, the county clerks, and it's often overlooked. Mm-hmm. But what kind of feedback would you give the general public about the importance of this position?
As the assessor, this position, it's a statute-based job. I mean, everything you do within county government is trickled down from statute or law. You want to make sure that you're following that to a T, and making sure that you're getting the word out on how things work. Because when people come into my office, that's most people's frustration, is just, please educate me on how it works, the assessor's office, from beginning to end. Most people don't know how a property tax is calculated or what drives their property taxes. So just for my office alone, it's mostly educating and being there for your taxpayers in any way you can help them. Of course, we do other things. We help people with their legals, or finding a deed that they need to, take care of, hopefully not getting their property into probate or whatever. So we're there for other reasons, giving people their exemptions or helping them file their exemptions, ag exemptions. But that's mostly what we do.
And like you said, I mean, it trickles down. There's recently a piece of legislation. We talked about it earlier on our show. I didn't get the update before today as far as where that bill ended up with the surveillance. And so a pretty big issue.
Hmm.
course, on the national level, we're looking at FISA. And here locally, we're even talking about flock cameras. And so people are on edge thinking about how much the government is monitoring them. And here we have a bill that directly applies to the county assessor saying, can assessors be allowed to take aerial photography of people's property? Give us a little background on that particular bill and what you think about it.
I'm definitely not a fan of Big Brother at all or any type of monitoring, right? But
Right.
it's a tool that the assessor's office already utilizes, whether it's by Google or purchasing aerial photography through a vendor, to help the process if you can't get into a property to assess, because that's our job, right? The statute requires us to assess property once every 4 years. So whenever you can't get in, or it's dangerous, there's definitely some dangerous
Mhm.
properties out there too. That's just a great way for them to currently do what you have to do as the county assessor.
Yeah. And so this would allow fixed wing aircraft to capture aerial photography, but it would, if I understand right, restrict drones. So we're not allowing drones to fly over.
Right, no drones. Don't have to
Okay.
have those to do our job. Um, so I like that in there. I think they're at least trying to give us a little protection if this is the job that we have to do. It is
Yeah.
something that we're already utilizing. Now it just takes out the fact that we no longer have to physically be on somebody's property. So that's what's driving this bill. Before we had aerial imagery, you were physically going to everybody's property, knocking on their door and asking to reassess everything.
Right.
People don't
Right.
like that. They don't like that either. So it's either
Yeah.
that
I mean, the
or you
other,
utilize aerials until
yeah.
something else changes. That's your two options.
Right. Well, let's shift a little bit to this Senate run. Okay. So we're talking about Senate District 43. You're running against an incumbent, Senator Jessica Garvin. I served with Jessica Garvin while I was in the Senate as well. And let's just look first before we get into some of the details about her. Why are you entering this race for Senate District 43?
I want to I want to represent my district in a way that they can be assured I am not for anti-Second Amendment legislation. I just want them to not have to worry whenever I am in there whether she's going to support something or not. If she's on the fence, I am not for vaccine mandates. There's no compromising. I wanted that for my district because right now I don't feel like I know what my senator would decide if push came to shove. I don't have a price when it comes to the Constitution and my liberties.
No, absolutely. And again, I mean, we talk about concerns from the general public, and I think that's high on the list is medical freedom concerning vaccines. And obviously, on the heels of COVID, the vaccine mandates, Garvin, I believe, was not as strong, you could say, in this area, not taking action to protect medical freedom, I would say. Do you have anything to add to that as far as your senator, your current senator, and where she stood on vaccine mandates?
I'm not here to throw mud on her. You can
Yeah,
see everything
exactly.
that went on during that time. I believe there's videos of her and the debate on that, some bills on what we were going to do to protect people that did not want this vaccine mandate. And I don't believe, if you go and watch that, that was my current senator's um, priorities was to protect individual liberties. She was more focused on overall. Again, we've talked about that before, the overall greater good. And I am not for that because then that infringes on my individual liberty.
Really prioritizing the individual liberty. Um, I think that resonates with a lot of people. You mentioned 2A legislation, and I'm just looking here at a bill that again Garvin ran, the Senate Bill 1254, and it changed the already illegal infraction from of carrying a firearm onto school property. It was already illegal, considered a misdemeanor, but she wanted to upgrade that to a felony with a $2,500 fine. And it allows state prosecutors to even seek up to a year in prison if the individual carrying the weapon is found guilty. So tell me your thoughts on this. I mean, it's important for voters to be able to contrast and know who they're voting. And on some issues, you might align, you might agree. And then on others, you say, no, we're very different. And so on an issue like this, a Second Amendment issue, which people consider very important, we always talk about the First Amendment is protected by the Second. And here
Right.
we have something that is directly impacting our Second Amendment rights. I just want to know your position on a bill like this.
Yeah, that bill right there is just a blunt instrument to Second Amendment rights, to make me a felon when I'm a law-abiding citizen that has done all the hoops to get my concealed carry license, and you're going to make me a felon. Yeah, it's crazy. If that's what you believe, great, but don't tell me that you're voting conservative.
Her argument was to better protect children and teachers and others on school campuses across the state. Sometimes there's this give and take, this compromise. Is this an area? I think that you just answered it. Is an area that we should compromise our Second Amendment in order? Would that then provide more safety to our teachers and students in schools?
Well, yeah, and that's the big dilemma, right? Everybody's on one end of the spectrum or the other. One thinks that a good guy with a gun is the only one that's stopping a bad guy with a gun, and then the other side that all guns are bad and we have to go after them. And I'm going to be on the side of the good guy with the gun is going to save the day every time. So I'm all for guns legally owned guns by licensed carriers. Responsible carriers. I'm all for that for my kids when they go to school and for anywhere. I don't think we should be having any gun-free zones.
Yeah. Are you do you carry?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. Do you
Anymore,
hunt?
you carry everywhere. You carry to the grocery
I
store. You
agree.
carry anywhere that I have my kids. It scares me anywhere I go, anywhere. You just don't know how fast something could happen.
Right. I know my wife and I both carry, and you think about it more and more, and you just pray that you never have to use it. But it's about
Right.
being prepared.
Well, and
And
cars are being tagged now. Like in my local area, I saw someone post that today that I think it was at a Walmart in town. Just your cars are being tagged, and we're like, and they're
what do you mean
meaning
tag?
that. Well, they showed me a picture and they're tagging their tail lights with like a letter F, meaning like there's one single female on that got out of this car,
Uh,
that they're watching, and people, whoever that may be, but
right.
or looking to kidnap a child. You see
Mm.
those videos, and it's just a scary place.
More now than ever, we better be taking every precaution and advantage of our freedom to protect ourselves and our family. You know, speaking about safety and protecting ourselves, I'm thinking about the border. It's on everybody's mind. What are your thoughts about the border, and what could Oklahoma do? And your role, if you were to be elected as a senator, what would your efforts look like when it comes to the border?
I gotta say, I don't know enough on what the legislation can do at the state level outside of, stop all the incentivizing that we are currently allowing, which would be education. I guess we're housing these illegals if we catch them and taking care of them. I'm not sure. But we've got to stop the entire incentivizing. We're definitely not going to be giving them licenses. That's just, oh man, that's just opening a door to
Yeah.
election fraud. But as far as the border goes, I know we can send our National Guard to help, but I don't really know. And I would love more, because I'm going to be all for whatever. I just don't know what all the state legislators can do at this point. they're already here. I guess we're helping our county sheriffs get them out of here. Um,
Yeah, recently they had legislation supported by McCall and Treat talking about um, providing a mechanism to remove them from the state. It came with fines and stuff, but of course, are you ever going to be able to collect those fines? It was
right.
good to see some kind of effort being directed in that direction. My concern with that is just kind of as a side note, I don't think there's any teeth in it, and it seems like it may be more of a prop bill to show that they're trying to do something rather than it actually do something. But I think what you mentioned is removing incentive is so key. As a former public education school teacher, as a Spanish teacher, you understand. I mean, well, I'll just ask you from your perspective, how are we incentivizing illegals through education?
We're letting them come to our schools, and
Just
unfortunately
free
our teachers
education.
are already, go ahead,
No, I just said free education. Yes.
free education at the taxpayers bill, right?
Yeah.
And our teachers are already dealing with larger than necessary class sizes. And then you throw on top of the language barrier. Most aren't speaking English, and yet we're passing them because we have to. I have heard those stories. So gotta stop. I don't know what the answer is, but you cannot allow them to come in and overrun our classrooms. We have our own problems.
Did you ever experience that as a teacher? Kids coming in that may not have English as their primary language. Of course, it may not be as big of a deal for you knowing Spanish,
No.
but
No, I don't think I had any in my class. I left in 2018 though, so
okay.
things were pretty secured at that point where I was at. I may have had one or two that were here legally, but that was not their first language. So I was always happy to oblige. But
Have you had time to go out into the neighborhoods and knock on doors and engage with the people so far?
yes, yes, every day. And it's been good so far. It's been really good.
What is the response? What are people saying? What's on their mind?
Taxes is a big one. Every door is just the taxes are killing us. I've had a lot of people too for the illegal immigration. What are we going to do? And protect small businesses. There's a lot of small business owners that are really feeling the crunch. They just feel like everybody's coming after them. And it doesn't matter what they are, a tag agency or a pharmacy or just from one spectrum to the other. If they're private, small owned, they feel the crunch and they just want somebody to say enough is enough. We're going to empower and help our small businesses first.
It's the lifeblood of America,
Yes.
and I totally agree. I'm a small business owner myself,
So
and
same.
tax relief would be huge. Like you said, taxes are right there connected to the small business protection and helping relieve that burden. What's your view on taxes? What would be an ideal situation in the state as far as taxes are concerned?
I mean, I'm a fighter on this one at this point. We have got to be fiscally restrained on every area that we spend at this point, or there is no going back, I don't believe. Um, in my area of what I do as the assessor is property taxes, right? And I feel like if the restraint does not happen soon, property taxes, I mean, I just don't see them ever going down going forward. The budgets are bigger than ever. The values are higher than ever, property values. You're going to get yourself into a debt that you can't get out of. So even when the property values plummet, which is bound to happen at some point, your tax bill is still going to have to pay off those debts. So just because your value plummets, there's two parts to a property tax. And that other part is going to increase. Those school districts and any taxing jurisdiction that gets property taxes will see that valuation plummet and say, well, now we got to raise the tax rate because we have to pay off these bills. So I would assume it's kind of similar everywhere. We are just outspending at this point. There's no restraint. And the only way you can continue that is to tax. So you either pull it in now and make some small sacrifices. People have made much bigger sacrifices in our country than what I'm talking about, or it's probably over. And I sound down, but that's just how I feel.
Well, I think that that sentiment is felt with a lot of people. And, coming from a tax assessor, I think you come with pretty good authority concerning property tax, especially. Do you have an idea of what, an ideal percentage of property tax looks like? Or would you like to remove it altogether? Or how would you approach property taxes?
Well, I mean, we're all for tax cuts.
Yeah, we'll
I
take anything
don't,
at this point.
I know. I don't know how you even get away from a property tax. I hate it on the level of I don't own my house, period. It's a horrible thing to think about. And
Yeah.
I'm starting to see it more and more when people come in elderly, and their taxes just never stop and they're on these fixed incomes. Surely we could maybe find a better way going forward to fund anything that takes property taxes, our public schools, our county sheriff. Um, but I don't even know how you start. So that's why I
Right.
just say the only answer at this point is to reel in the spending before it's too gone, to before we are too far gone.
You
Did I
know,
answer your question?
no, no, it's good. I've talked to several people. Some are in favor of just lowering the levels across the board, the state income tax, the property tax, the consumption tax, and
Well, let me just
some
say
are
in this
for.
in the level of property taxes, if we just lower the level, right now, on my end, you receive a 3% increase on your value if you're not at market every year. That's Article 10 of the Constitution. We voted on it. So let's say you cut it in half to 1.5% increase annually. That's still only on my side. The taxing side of it, which is your school district's rates, when they see the decrease in value and they are budgeting on that previous year's higher value. You see what I'm saying? If 500,000 was their value last year that they pulled taxes off of, and then we said, no, we're going to cut it down to 250,000. Well, again, we already got bills on the books that you have to pay, and you were banking on that higher value. So what happens when you cut the value? They got to raise a tax rate to pay it off. It's just a vicious cycle. And I would assume it's the same for most income taxes, corporate taxes, anything. I mean, I'm sure it's the same way. You cut it. What do? You got to stop spending. That's all there is.
Yes,
That's the
you
only
know,
answer. You have to
we've
stop
compared it to
spending.
your family budget so many times. Families have budgets, and if you are spending more than you're bringing in, you just have to reduce your spending,
There
or you
is
got to
no
bring more
other
in.
answer. I know.
You know,
And
as
people
a
don't want to hear that yet, right? We all want to keep up with the Joneses.
Right.
We have lived that lifestyle for so long. That's why I said it. We're going to have to make some choices and some sacrifices if we want to get out of this turmoil in this circle. And then at the Fed level, of course, just to get out of the trillions of dollars of debt we're in, because it's just an injustice to our children at this point.
Yeah.
So
Now on the school level, obviously you have experience there as a former public school teacher, and it's been in the news nationwide with Ryan Walters, his initiatives to reform our public education, taking a very different approach and position than his predecessor. But addressing issues like pornography in schools and the LGBTQ agenda, things like that. Were these things that you witnessed? I know you're looking back a few years, so you got to
yeah,
remember. But were these things that you witnessed firsthand in your schools, or is it not where you taught?
probably wasn't bad where I taught. At that time, I was probably dealing more with, I think jewels were the big thing. Like we were sneaking in some new types of,
The vapes?
the vapes and stuff was the big one at the time. And we were not allowing, but it was just getting snuck in, and it could be concealed very well.
Right.
Outside of that, I mean, I wasn't the librarian. This stuff is being kind of concealed and hidden. I would assume it's still being hidden, and some teachers don't even know it's there. So I can't say no, it wasn't there,
Right.
but I didn't see and I'm from a small town. I mean, I taught at a small town, but it's slowly growing and close to the city. It is starting to change. The climate is starting to change. But no,
Is that
not.
something you think that the state legislature should get involved in?
I hate to say it. I mean, yeah, I mean, I wish it wasn't that way, but there's going to be people that disagree on what is allowable and what is not. So at some point, I guess the state of Oklahoma just has to decide what is okay for our children and what is not. For me, if it's okay to put porn in schools, then public schools is probably not going to be for my kids because I don't want my kids to be exposed to that. Or if DEI is going to be part of the curriculum, then I can't let my kids be a part of it because I don't believe in it. So we need to gauge really where our state is. And I hope we're conservative. I hope the overwhelming majority is saying, no, we don't want this in our schools. We will back our senators and reps when they vote to say enough. We don't want DEI. We don't want gender ideology. We don't want any of this in our classrooms.
What are your top 3 issues? If you came into the Senate, you could have anything you want. What are the areas that you're gonna focus on first?
I think we got to, I mean, yeah, everybody just wants to change the world when they get in there. I want to ensure that that's possible. So right now it just feels like very few are allowed to have a bill heard that their district wants. So if you can't tackle that, then I guess there's no point in even wanting to see change anywhere because you're probably not going to get it. So that would be my number one priority, working with anybody that is willing to say enough with the power grab. We are here to all represent our district equally, and we will do whatever it takes to make that happen. That would be priority 1.
That's great. Just along those lines, you come in and a big question that people like me have is, what kind of Republican are you? I think that there's a lot of people asking these questions, and there's a lot of frustration around the state, at least in the circles that I'm in, and saying, I know you're a Republican. I know your mailer says, Second Amendment, pro-life,
Right.
all the talking points, bam, bam, bam. But how can we know that's who you really are and that you'll actually do the things you say you'll do? So I don't know if you've gotten that question at the doorstep. I got it pretty frequently, is how do we know who you are and that you'll actually do what you say you'll do? So I'll bounce it to you and ask you that question. And how can the voters of Senate District 43 have confidence in Kendal Sacchieri?
That's tough when you don't have a voting record yet, right? But
Right.
I have to just use my words, and hopefully their gut will tell them that she is a truth teller that loves the Lord, that wants to see a positive change at whatever cost it might be. I don't have a price when it comes to speaking out for right and wrong. I'm not going to augment my Constitution in any way to make it fit an agenda that's on the floor. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, it's right. And when I get in there, then my constituents better be following my voting record. Until then, I'm knocking doors. You ask me the hard questions. Let me give you an answer, and you be the judge. Whether you like my answers or not, I am a fighter, and I can just say that I do not have a price. I don't have a price. I'm taking a pay cut to do this. I have 3 little children. That the youngest just turned 1 year old. I'm missing these moments with them so I can do this for them. So
That's a big sacrifice. That's a big sacrifice. And what does that look like for you if you are elected? And I'm sure you've thought about it. I'm sure you and your husband have talked about it. The balance, being a mom of young children, and then the demands of being a senator representing District 43. What does that look like in your mind?
I know it's some parts of the year it's going to be harder than others. When you're in session, you're at the beck and call of your voters, or of your constituents, and making sure you're there for every vote, and you're staying up late to make sure you're educated on those votes before you make them. So at that point, my husband's going to be running the household, and our house might look a little trash, but we'll get through those months. And then when I'm outside of those months, of course, I want my kids up there. I hope my kids can be up there a lot, make that part of their life as well. And then once you get out of session, I don't see why my kids can't come with me everywhere I go. When I travel through my district, I've got 5 counties to be involved with. I want to be at everything, and I hope my kids are welcome at everything.
And remind me of those counties.
Garvin, Stevens, Grady, McLean, Cleveland.
And how can people find out more about you if they want to look at your platform and get in touch with you?
My website, kendal4ok.com. You can get involved there. My platform is there. You can go to Facebook. That's just going to keep you up on where I'm going to be. If you want to, next Thursday, I'll be in Duncan. Come on out to Bethel. I'll be there at 7 o'clock with some other candidates running for House District 50, I think. So yeah, keep up to date on my events there. My cell phone, call me 405-230-3545. Text me, call me. Just make a point to make contact.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Kendal, I appreciate your time here, and good luck on this race coming into the primaries.
Thank you very much. Yep, June 18th.
June 18th. Don't miss it, guys. It's about voting. Everyone has their complaint, their concern, but it doesn't matter if you don't show up to vote. So show up to vote June 18th for the primary. And guys, go check out Kendal Sacchieri. Kendal, I appreciate your time today.
You too. Thank you.